down, but okay. Well, we'll get
exciting.
I'm so glad you're back. I'm gonna have to turn that down.
I'm back.
I'm so glad you're back.
Oh, I'm so glad to be back.
I had a great time with Janine last week, but I'm really glad you're back. I missed your face.
It was such a cute episode. I liked it so much.
Yay.
I like her so much. I can't wait to meet her.
Yeah, we'll have her back on again. And then I'll just be away and you can chat with her.
No, it's a whole family meeting.
We can do that. That sounds good.
Okay.
So, how have you been? Catch us up.
Woof. I've been good. I've been overwhelmed. Basically, Hunter's been doing a school program. I think I've mentioned it on here before, but he had school and work, and I had work, and our childcare was in and out, and we had to quarantine because of a COVID exposure, and and now he's injured, which is what happened last week.
Hunter,
so he
not
couldn't
the baby.
pick up. Hunter is injured, and so he couldn't pick up the baby. So he couldn't take care of the baby without me, and it's just been a time. Should we call it a period of growth? Sure.
Ooh, yeah.
It's been very, very challenging and exhausting. So I'm really grateful to have been able to take a couple weeks and take something off my plate. So thank you for helping make that happen, Hannah.
You're welcome.
And Janine, thank you, Janine.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just really glad that it seems, knock on wood, like we're getting to a place of mild equilibrium. I'm hopeful.
I was going to say, you seem cautious about it.
I'm very cautious about
Your choice of words. It's like, I don't want to jinx anything.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to the summer. We have a lot of plans for the summer. We have a lot of dreams for the summer. So I'm trying to keep my expectations at a reasonable level. And we're moving in. I'm going to move into like changing the baby's sleep operation. So I think we're still going to be tired. But we will be more together.
Oh.
And more of a team than we've been able to be. I mean, we've been a team, just very separately. He's been doing a lot of his work, and I've been doing a lot of the homework and my work, and it's just been nuts. It's been really, really nuts.
Yeah.
With the goal of it being not nuts moving into the future. So,
right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what's been going on. It's been really busy since like January, but the last few weeks were really just next level stuff. So that's why I had to take a break. But I'm so glad to be back. And using my fancy microphone.
Yeah, I'm really excited and curious how this audio this time is going to turn out. Because my audio situation is also different, and then you have your new fancy microphone, and I'm hoping that this will just amp our quality.
Tickle your eardrums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this time that Megan has been having, and she just told us about, ties in perfectly to the topic that we wanted to talk about today. And I touched on this in last week's episode when I was talking to Janine. We want to talk about, like, splitting up care and gender roles and, like, how to do life with the baby.
How to do life with a baby. Yeah. And a partner. Thank God for the partner.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
doing this. Can you imagine being a single
17
parent?
rounds of applause for anyone who is a single parent.
I know, right?
and managing this all on their own because I'm exhausted and I'm not a single parent.
Yeah. And that's a whole thing that we could get in even politically. Like, it's not okay that it's not possible to sustain a family on a single salary.
Yeah.
On like doing part-time, because if you have children, you can't do it. And it's like a whole thing. We're not going to get into that.
We're just going to talk from my experience and your plans.
Yeah.
Like we usually do.
Because that's only what we can speak to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you want to jump in?
Yeah, let's jump in. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing to manage a child in our life, and where we started from. When we had the baby, Hunter and I were both working full time, and he was in a job that he didn't like. And so our plan was for him to start this retraining process after taking parental leave when the baby was born. So he took parental leave. He went back to work for a little while, and then he found a new job and started his training program about 5 or 6 months after the baby was born. So I guess that's the first thing, right? Like, when a baby is born or a new child comes into a family, parental leave in the US is pretty gendered. So a mother who gives birth, in whatever form that takes, is able to apply for disability, usually, for about 6 weeks, sometimes more, depending on if there were complications or surgeries or, other things involved. And then through my job, I'm a state employee. So through my job, I got 8 weeks of full paid leave on top of that 6 weeks of disability. So, that's a pretty good situation here. Like, I ended up with 3.5 to 4 full months of leave, and that was mostly paid. And then since I was working from home, I was able to get, and COVID. So COVID and working from home highly impacted the way that our newborn time and early baby time worked out.
Yeah. Do you know if it's different? Because you said women who give birth. Is it different for parents who adopt?
So, yes, it is. I think you can still take... So in America, there's FMLA, which is Family Medical Leave Act. So if you, and I might get this wrong, but I think this is how I understand it. And if I'm wrong, let me know. But if a new child comes into a home, you can take FMLA, whether that child is born or adopted or however it comes into the home. So that is it's not required to be paid, and it is a law from the federal government that says that the company you're working for needs to have the same or equivalent position for you when you come back after 12 weeks. And you can take 12 weeks of FMLA within a 12-month period. So over the course of a year, you can take 12 weeks. And that also applies to people caring for family members otherwise. So if you have a sick family member or an older family member or someone in hospice, you can take a FMLA
Okay.
for those reasons as well. So that if you're in a full-time job, FMLA is usually how you end up taking parental leave. Most companies will grant that to both the non-birthing parent, usually the father, and also the birthing parent. But some places only give it to the birthing parent. So it's just kind of wild, wild west out here. It's whatever. If you have a good job that has good parameters for parental leave, then you're lucky. Then you're in a good situation to have a baby. But there's lots of people who are in hourly jobs or new jobs, or, list a scenario that don't end up with that same opportunity. So I was able to, and if I had wanted to, I could take vacation time on top of that.
Okay.
I didn't have a ton of vacation time, but if I had needed to or wanted to, I could have, saved up my vacation time and taken vacation time on top of that time. So
Right.
I could have ended up staying home for probably max 5 or 6 months. If I really had been at my job for a long time and like banked a bunch of vacation hours on top of the FMLA and disability that I got.
Okay.
So yeah, I was able to be fully at home with the baby for about 3.5 months. Hunter was able to be fully at home and with the baby for 6 or 8 weeks, which is really, really good for a non-birthing parent in America, and was so great for us. It was just so wonderful. And I can't imagine having done it where he had to go back to work.
Yeah.
Bonkers. And we weren't expecting for him to get paid for that time because that was FMLA time. So he was taking FMLA time and was not expecting to get paid. But then because of COVID and the way the public health emergency leave stimulus stuff worked out, his work was able to, or required to, pay him for that time off. I'm not sure how that worked out, but we're not complaining. It was lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep changing my position here because I'm sitting like in my closet basically, and it's kind of uncomfortable. So sorry about that, everybody.
Don't be uncomfortable. So do you want to talk about how that works, how new baby stuff works in Germany and or Brazil?
Well, Brazil, no idea.
Fair.
I remember asking my, what's the term? Sister-in-law about it. I think they do have some sort of that. She did get a little bit of paid leave. But I don't know any details about it.
Yeah.
In Germany, when you started talking about it, I was like, ooh, I should have read up on that part. I didn't because I'm self-employed, so that doesn't apply to me anymore. There is paid leave, and it's a lot more than in the United States. There's a little bit of paid leave, I think like 6 weeks before your due date, and then sometime after that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, maybe, and this is pretty sure this is wrong. I'm just going to say number. Maybe it's also 6 weeks then after birth of paid, full paid leave. And then you can take up to, and this is also a number that I'm more guessing than knowing, I want to say up to 1 year, 1.5 years maybe, of part paid leave. And depending on how long you want to stretch it, your percentage of pay goes down.
I think my friend that had a baby said that in Germany said that she could have stretched it to 2 years.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. I think you can stretch it to 2 years, but then you get paid significant. I think you get like 80% if you do 1 year, and you get like 60 or 50% if you do the longer amount of time.
Yeah, that
But
sounds
again,
good.
those are numbers that are probably
It's something
wrong.
along those lines, though.
Yeah.
And this is for the birthing parent, but you can split this time with the non-birthing parent,
Mm-hmm.
which is also fairly new, I want to say. This wasn't always a thing, and it's fairly new that this was extended to the not birthing parent.
Mm-hmm.
And is, because of stigma, also still not very much taken advantage of.
Yeah, definitely.
Which we're also not going to get into this. We could do a whole thing about the...
Well, I think
that,
we'll get
but-
into it a little bit, but we're not going to go heavily down the road.
Yeah.
Because it impacts throughout child care years.
Yes.
That stigma and expectation and all of that.
Yeah. So, and then for self-employed people, which is me, I also get support if I choose to not work. It just works a little bit differently.
Awesome.
Like, for example, in order for them like to calculate how much they're going to pay me, they do that on the full last year. And that's year. They do. So with the employee, they do that calculation on the past 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And for self-employed people, they do it.
Oh, they do it based on the calendar year.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that
Bummer.
for me, because I'm a new business, might turn out not to be so great. So we might have Mateos do more parent time than me because he's employed.
Oh, that's smart.
So that's going to be something that we're just going to have to do math on and see what works better.
Definitely. For your ability
Whenever
to
that happens.
sustain your household.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of calculus that goes into.
Yeah, there's like people that do that for a job that you can hire to do that calculation for you and figure out what is your best option because it's that complicated.
Wow.
There's like, you can do this thing, and then there's the flexi model, and then you can like combine models, and it's like a whole thing.
Wow. Okay.
You need to study it to understand. But I mean, Germany, right? So, not surprised.
Hey, and
bureaucracy.
There are models. There are those models. You have options.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that.
For us, it's like, do you take unpaid leave or do you go back to work? Like,
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. Madness. But that's cool.
Yeah, so that's the baselines that we're operating from.
Right. Yeah. And I loved spending that time with him at home, and I loved being able to have more time at home even after we got childcare. And we ended up, because of COVID, hiring in-home care. And we actually only got it part-time to start with because that was what we felt like we could afford. And the one daycare within a reasonable distance from our house, we were not comfortable with their COVID times approach.
Philosophy.
Yeah. And he was so little. He was like 3 months old. That there was just no reasonable way we were going to put him in that position. So
yeah, teeny tiny baby.
He was so teeny tiny. And so we decided to hire in-home help. So we had, used care.com, not a sponsor. Please sponsor us. That'd be great. To find a sitter. And I interviewed a bunch of people, and that's part of this story, right? I did all of that work. And I think I did it because I wanted to do it. I did it a little bit because I had used care.com before as a sitter, as a nanny. And so I was familiar with the platform. I was familiar with the job posting position. And getting into gender role stuff a little bit here, I knew what the jargon and lingo was around childcare. And I knew that because I was a babysitter when I was a teenager. I was a babysitter in college. And that was an expected job that I could do. And I started when I was 12, right? I started doing mother's helper childcare when I was 12 years old. So the stepping on process for that was so much easier for me because I had the background knowledge for it. Whereas Hunter hadn't been around a baby pretty much ever before this. So, you know, there's been like 2 babies in his life total since he was a kid himself. And there are a lot of babies in my life, both related to me and not related to me. So that was really interesting, thinking about, like, why did I do that and why didn't he do that, right? Because if you don't think about it, like, I'm going to automatically do all the things because that's what feels like it should happen. And somebody that I watch on YouTube recently called it the emotional labor of a household, right? And that tends to automatically fall on, if you're in a heterosexual couple, on the woman in the relationship. And if you're not actively trying to combat that, if you're not actively trying to work against that, that's just what's going to happen. And it definitely happens in our household, partly for reasons that are not gender related, partly for personality reasons, but I think largely and part of that personality wrap up is gender based. And just what people talked about around me and what people talked about to me and what questions people asked me and what jobs I was expected to have and what jobs my parents were expected to have and the people around me. You know, it's really on a granular level a part of every decision and exposure that we get. That you are a woman and therefore possibly a mother, and therefore we should talk about your motherhood because that's, you know, this isn't said, right? But that's what makes you valuable. That's what makes you contributing to society. That's what makes, and it's all of the feminist stuff, all of the things that feminists talk about, you know, obviously still applies when you're working around a baby. And I am happy to do work around my baby, right? Like, I'm thrilled to be a mom and take care of this child. But there is like society stuff that changes my load compared to Hunter's load. And I think you wrote in the notes the mental load of child rearing. Because I was socialized as a woman.
Yeah.
So that's a huge part of what I wanted to talk about today. Because I'm like actively thinking about it on a daily basis right now. Because we're moving into a time when Hunter will be our main childcare. Whereas the sitter and I have been our main childcare for the past, since he was born, really. I mean, he and I pretty much split it when the baby was first born while he was at home. We've talked about that in the postpartum episode. He, my mom, and I were a really good team, and I was very much a member of that team rather than the leader of that team. But since he went back to work, the sitter and I have sort of shared the load of childcare. And then especially once he went to school, it was me and the sitter almost exclusively. Like, he was able to help on a much smaller scale than is the ideal for sustaining a household. Now we're moving into where he will be our primary childcare giver.
And how are you guys going about this transition?
Well, we just started it.
Okay.
So a lot of conversation, and it means changing some of the mechanics of how the day with the baby goes. So we're really, really just very much in the beginning of it. We've talked a little bit about it, and we've talked about what he's nervous about and kind of like the scheduling outline, but we haven't talked a whole bunch about making the transition in an active and thoughtful way.
Okay.
Hopefully we will.
Yeah, I think I was just wondering, because you talked about that you've been thinking a lot about it and that you have become more aware of it. And I was just wondering how far that had taken place in conversation between the two of you and Hanna thinking about those things.
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of space for conversation in our lives.
Right.
Recently.
That's fair. Okay.
We're moving into a place where conversations can happen, and especially emotionally loaded conversations and like bigger picture socialization society conversations can happen. Yeah. We didn't really have the space scheduling wise and then also emotionally for either of us to have those kinds of conversations for the past 6 months, which is part of why it was such an intense time. But we will definitely be having those conversations.
We're all on our toes.
You on the edge of your seats, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at the notes. I'm not really sure where to go from here.
Well, I want to talk about how you plan to work out your work and childcare, because I like what your notes say and I want to hear more about it.
Okay. Well, I touched on this in what we talked about earlier, how this is handled politically and financial support-wise in Germany, that, at least in my mind, it will mostly depend on what makes more sense financially.
Right.
So this might always change, right? But if it were to happen today, I would want to continue working in some sort of capacity because I love what I do. Mm-hmm. And I cannot imagine Mateo's doing only childcare. I don't know, neither of us have ever been parents, but I cannot imagine him being fulfilled by just doing childcare all day. I feel
Girl,
that...
me either.
Yeah, exactly. I think
me
that...
either. I thought I would, and the 3 weeks I had of it, I was like, I need to leave. Might have been pandemic related because I couldn't see anyone or do anything, but
yeah.
Turns out I'm not built for that.
Yeah.
So it's okay if he's not either.
Yeah, and I don't know if I am. I think I used to have this picture of myself that was
same
something I could imagine being very happy that being my whole life, and I still, there's so much of it that I want to, I could fill a whole day and be very happy with all of these homemaker and parent and all these things. So I don't know how our lives are going to turn out to be.
Right.
As of right now, the way I see each of us, I think each of us will enjoy doing both childcare and homemaker things and having a job that is somewhat separate of the home life.
Yeah.
Meaning not only away from the childcare and homemaking, but also each other, the partner.
Yeah. Cheers to that.
Just something separate and your own.
Yeah.
And with other people.
Right. That has been hugely surprising to me because my job is not something that I'm passionate about, but I'm in administration, so it's very like task oriented, and there's a thing that I have to do, and then I get it done, and then it's done and it's completed, and someone can do their job better because I have done that thing, right? So it's super like satisfying and fulfilling, and it's mine. Like you say, it's separated from the baby, it's separated from the house, and it's separated from Hunter, and it's with other people. And turns out, even if your job isn't your passion, it's still super valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I see both of us working and splitting household and childcare duties. And in my ideal world, we have an au pair that helps us with also childcare and household. And that, again, is just a question of what our finances look like when that child happens.
Yeah.
But that's something I always wanted. Everyone knows that Megan and I know each other through student exchange. Yeah. And once my parents stopped hosting students, I was like, I cannot wait until I have my own family and can host students.
Yeah.
And made the resolution to, when I have a kid, I can get an au pair. I really want that. And that
I was so eager that at 25 I hosted a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
He's lovely.
I've thought about
I love
that
him
several times. I almost did that, but I'm glad it never happened because I don't know that would have been a great situation for the student.
I got very lucky in my 16, 17-year-old boy child. He was great. But yeah, au pairs are very cool. I actually think we're heavily thinking about that as well. But I think once we hit more than one child, that needs daycare. Yeah. Because for one child, it didn't make financial sense. But for two children, if they're both in daycare, definitely makes financial sense.
Right.
Because daycare is expensive. So if and when we have another child, we're planning to, but as long as it works out.
Ooh, everybody stay tuned. Who's going to be first? Megan or Hanna? Who's going to be pregnant first?
We'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait. Yeah, so there's definitely plans for that. Like whenever we talk about renovations in the house or whatever, I have that in mind, that we need a room for an au pair.
Yeah.
Oh, and talking about the house, in this house, there are like two separate apartments, and the second one is habited by my mother, who I think will have a great time and has mentioned several times that she could work it out financially to take down her work time and do part of the childcare. So I feel like we have many options to split and not one of us have the majority, like the big majority of the work.
That's great.
Yeah. So we don't have a set solution, but I feel fairly...
I don't think you need one yet.
Free, in the possibilities.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
now
a sound.
I'm just dreaming about all the futures that might or might not happen.
Yeah, it's fun. I like doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that you are doing a bunch of research about parenting styles and like development stuff for children and babies. Is that something that Mateos is interested in or taking part in yet?
No.
Do you think he will be interested and take part when it becomes more of a real, like, it's coming?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've told him about a few things sometimes and said, I would like for you to check it out so we can talk about it because I'm really interested in this and I really like this style. He hasn't yet. And I get it that it's probably for him just mentally further away and therefore not feasible, tangible to look at that stuff and educate himself on that. And I have come to a place of letting that go and seeing the beauty even in him maybe not looking at any of that and then just taking his very own gut approach and seeing how that works out and what the mix of that will be. I don't know. He might also, I can also imagine him getting really flustered once it starts to get real and be like, oh my God, she totally knows what she's going to want to do and has answers to all of these hypothetical questions and I don't have any. What, like, and just be like, you do it. And then go in overdrive. I can also see that happen.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think Hunter and I tend to some of that. Some of the, like, he knows that I've engaged with this a bunch. And so he's just like, well, you have the answers. You, like, not even you do it, just like, I'm going to do it wrong. And I tend to want to save him from discomfort.
Yeah.
Which isn't always the thing to do. I think what you said was really beautiful. And it's kind of where I'm coming to as well. I mean, like I said, I've been thinking about this emotional load thing a lot. And the research on parenting and research on child development and all of that knowledge that is part of a lot of people's parenting process so often falls on the mom or falls on the woman. Again, we're both in heterosexual relationships, so that just is so automatic. And the expectation that you will know, and then the expectation that you will also be interested, right? So there's not an expectation that a father will be interested in the developmental details of their baby, societally speaking. And I know a lot of dads with, you know, dad and mom pairs are very interested and like very active in that part of it, but there's not the baseline expectation of that. And there is that with moms. When I was first like going through the process of dealing with that in my brain, I was like, well, you need to read all this stuff. You need to know all this stuff. You need to be interested. You need to do all these things. And of course, during this time when we were both at 100% capacity, that I couldn't expect him to do that.
Yeah.
And he did do some of it, right? Like there was something that I was like, if you just read this, that will help me, because then you'll have a baseline, right? You'll have an understanding of what I'm doing, and then you can decide how you want to do it. It's not how I phrased it. In my brain, it was like, so then you can do it that way too.
Right.
But maybe I can be grateful for the space of that not being possible, because I also am getting to the point where I don't feel like it's necessary. Because like you said, he can do things his way and I can do things my way, and
yeah,
the baby will figure it out. Right? Like,
yeah,
the baby knows who they're interacting with and establishes relationships that are different with one parent versus the other parent versus one grandparent versus the other 7 grandparents. We have so many grandparents. Yeah. So yeah, I think I've come to a space of a little more letting go.
At first, it was, in my head, was I want him to read all these things and educate himself on this because, like you said, because I want him to do it the way that I want to do it and want us to do it the same way and agree on all the things.
So we don't ruin our child.
Yes, because I know the truth and this is the right way to do it.
I know the right answer.
Yeah. Then it became, I actually want him to look at things and figure out what his opinion is.
Right.
And for us then to talk about it and have a discourse about it. And me giving him, let's call it homework, giving him like, can you look at this? was just me trying to spark that
Mm-hmm.
for him to start looking at stuff and then form an opinion. As I said, that has not been happening so far. So now the way I'm doing it is I just use opportunity to talk about these things. So we have
Mm-hmm.
a niece that she is, oh my God, she's turning 2 this August.
She's so big.
Yeah.
Years are so short.
Yeah, I know. We met her when she was 4 months old. We were in Brazil when she was 4 months old. So we had like 2.5 months with her. And since then, we talk to them every Sunday via FaceTime. And it's so cute that like she knows us through the screen. I'm so amazed every time. Like it's gotten to the point that she asks for me when it's just Mateo's and I'm not there yet. She'll ask for me and I'm like, that's so cool that she knows that. Anyways, so we see them parent through the screen, and then I use those opportunities to talk about that and how he would have handled the situation and how I see it and what I would be doing differently and why I didn't like it that way and why. And then that's how I've been figuring out his opinion and have been informing him of my opinion.
Right.
So that's been interesting.
As you're saying that, I'm like, oh, we haven't had like active, that kind of situational conversations, which aren't, Hunter's not super into those super specific situational conversations anyway. So that might be difficult, but that's cool. Does he like engage on that level, or is it sort of like difficult to get a conversation going, or does it lead to interesting stuff?
In this scenario, when we have a concrete example in front of our eyes and like I flinch and then explain why, that works. When I used to try to bring up theoretical scenarios, that he was not into it. He was not having it.
Yeah.
That's not a thing.
That's fair. Yeah, it's so specific to the partnerships and their own experience as children. And
yeah. He, however, has more hands-on experience with children.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure he changed his brother's diaper, which is nuts because the one that has a child now, he was born, I think, a little bit over a year after Mateos and his twin were born. It was nuts. I keep thinking about that so often. Like, how did this woman survive? She had twins. And then after, I don't know, 2 or 3 months having the twins, got pregnant again. So he took care of him, and then I think many cousins. Yeah. He was like hands-on as a boy. And I never had that. I don't have any babysitting experience. I'm not worried about it. I'm not afraid of any of it. I feel
the mechanics are super easy to learn.
Yeah, I feel like it's gonna be fine. I'm gonna be super
for
fine.
A week and then you'll be like, I've been doing this my whole life.
Yeah, like when my sister-in-law asked me if I wanted to bathe my niece, I was like, yes, but you'll be with me, right? But other than that, it's fine. So he has that, which is good. So he won't be nervous for that. Yeah. And have a little bit more pre-experience than me. I think that's nice.
Is there anything we still want to cover?
There's an abbreviation that I don't know what it means. You might have talked about it already.
Oh, that's SAHM, stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did talk about that. But I really wonder, I almost want to try again when I can like go to Mommy and Me classes and take him to a playground. And I mean, obviously he's too little for a playground and was when I was home with him, but I'm interested how different that is now versus when people are able to be out and about with their tiny children.
Yeah, won't that be a time? We're all looking forward to it.
I'm fully vaccinated, baby.
I did want to touch about so mental load you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this a bit recently, and that's actually something Janine and I talk a lot about. And I somewhat analyzed our current situation and realized that we are already at a pretty heavy imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I just wanted to say I think this is something that couples could and should look at before they have a child, because this is something that can already be very unequal even before you have the child. And then from that, maybe if your partner is open to it, you can try to have a theoretical conversation, like, once the child is here, who's going to do what? Because it's not
and
just...
that's a big part of what we talked about in the pre-baby conversations too, right? Like, how are we going to navigate sharing this task, this enormous task?
Though what I want to emphasize with this, that it's not just like physically doing the task, but who mentally, which is why it's called mental load, is taking note
about what the task will entail. And
so like
how it will happen, and what's the safe way to do it, and what are even the safety concerns here, and what are the emotional concerns, and how are we going to approach it. All of that stuff has to happen before you get to the task.
So me being able to ask Mateos, can you please go buy the kid new shoes? Yes, that's already helped that I didn't have to do it. But the mental load of that is that I have that in my head all year round.
You know what shoes the child has. You know what size their feet are.
Yeah.
You know that their shoes currently aren't going to fit them very soon. And then you have to take the initiative to...
So the goal is to outsource that whole task with the thinking part, and not just the physical.
Yeah, and it's something we don't think about, right? It's something we don't think about until...
This is a concept that I was presented with earlier this year. I was not aware of this last year. Yeah. Through a different podcast. Thank you very much.
But yeah, it's huge, and there's a huge mental load that comes with parenting, and it is a struggle if you're in a heterosexual traditional relationship. It's so easy to just automatically expect yourself as a woman to take on that mental load, and to think that it's natural, and to think that it makes sense. There's a lot of things that I have thought about, and I do have an opinion on. But if I want him to take on that whole column of the load, right, from thinking about it to buying the shoes, just to continue with that example, I have to let him make all of those decisions.
Yeah.
So it's not just offloading it. It's also actively keeping those decisions out of your brain. Right? Like, it's actively saying, nope, not my job. Nope, not my job. And then also being okay with your partner making those decisions.
Yep.
And trusting that they have put as much thought into those decisions as you would have wanted them to. Even if it's not the same amount of thought you would have put into it, they put enough into it to take care of that child. And that is the same, like, building trust that we also talked about in the pre-baby conversations one, right? That's the actively trusting your partner, actively choosing to trust your partner. One thing that I will leave with, just because we've talked a lot about this today, is a dad in a podcast recently that I was listening to talked about one of the most important things that his partner does in their parenting navigation is staying out of his way. And he didn't mean that in like a bullish kind of way, right? But he meant it in a, she doesn't jump in and fix things. She doesn't jump in and tell me the best way to do things. And that's something that I really struggle with trying to do. Just like, he doesn't need me to mom him and the baby. he can do it.
Yeah.
And I know that conceptually, but in a moment, it's so often easy because especially in our situation, because I've done so much of the childcare that I'm like, oh, I've done this 7 times and this is the way that it worked the best when I tried all 7 versions, right? And so I'm like, here, let me give you this easier answer. But hearing that, like, the best thing that his partner does is stay out of his way, I'm like, okay, cool. I need to remember that. I need to like have that as one of my mantras.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm already trying to work on that because I also have realized that in our co-parenting is probably going to be the biggest challenge for me. And I think I've said this example before. I already do it with him washing dishes. Like, yeah. I need to calm down.
Well, you work really hard to find the best and the right answer. And then just other people don't appreciate it when you give it to them.
Well, that's very kind, but Jesus.
It's work. It's all work. Living with other humans is work.
Yeah.
Especially when you like them.
Isn't that true? Well, all right.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Oh, this was so fun. I'm so glad to be back. I like talking to you.
Me too. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you had a good time. And
let us know how you navigate
next week.
Partnership and parenting if you're doing that.
Please do.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. See you later.
Talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.